Charles, hello.
It's great to be here again, Jason.
Lovely to have you as always. We're closing in. It's Wednesday. It's time to close in.
Yeah, finally, after so much work. I mean, you and I have been at this this is, I think, our 70th video.
Wow.
I mean, together on this, of which I think 50 are in the long form format with slides and all that. And I think it's finally beginning to pay dividends here.
Well, and of course, you've been doing this for almost 3 years, right?
Actually, more than 3 years, sad to say.
I think it's nice that we were able to come together, though, and create this kind of persistent flow of information that kind of gave everyone a central area where they could find your information and review it and keep coming back to it and really get that concentration going. That built the momentum, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think what we've been doing here, really, it's a marriage of sort of very old school ways of analyzing things. That would be my part of the contribution. And new school, availing ourselves of technology, that would be your part of the contribution. And what we're doing here, I mean, much as I really do like some of the personalities on Fox News and some of the content on Fox News, totally given up on globalist Bloomberg and NBC, perish the thought of even, maniac NBC and ABC and CBS. I mean,
is maniac NBC MSNBC?
Right, it's spelled with a silent S.
Maniac. Well, I don't know what the S, right?
The silent, it's a French silent S. But anyway, the thing of it is, when I watch Fox, they don't, what they should really do, and advice to the executives at Fox, I know that Rupert is basking in the glory of having been one of the few people down there in Washington, D.C. with his new wife, Jerry Hall. But, the thing of it is, people don't want to sit there. If you're 38, if you're the prime demographic, 25 to 54, you do not want to listen to Sean Hannity and be interrupted by adult diapers, this medicine, cars with kids, some other crazy My Pillow. You don't want to be interrupted every
We like My Pillow.
We
now.
like My Pillow, but still, you want to have, particularly for something this big, this complicated, you want to get some big sponsors, of which there are many. Try some foundations.
But I don't think we fully agree on this, because my problem with the sponsors isn't so much the interrupting of Sean Hannity's flow. It's that just anytime you have that kind of corporate-owned, advertiser-driven news source, there's ways they control them.
Yeah, but that's why I said foundations. You got these husky foundations who are trying to spread the word, who are trying to do good public service. Mm-hmm. Many of them, I don't particularly like PBS all that much, although I have to say I really enjoyed Downton Abbey. And I like Antique Roadshow and things like that. But the format of having these people who have got tons of money in a foundation, not for profit, just underwrite the cost of an hour-long show, and you be picky on it. You don't say you're going to take it from the Clinton Foundation. You take it from a real foundation, or the Obama Foundation. You take it from a foundation that's really trying to do good works. And even better, if the foundation really wanted to be special, they would say, you know what we want to do here? We like what you're doing. We're going to underwrite this, and we want you to say that this is underwritten by an anonymous donor. We will tell your legal people who it is, but we don't want any credit. But
they also can't have any influence over the reporting.
But foundations can't, right? You can't.
Yeah, I like that.
It's something like that actually could work a lot better, and rather than breaking up the flow. I mean, yes, I know that many people have a 15-second attention span. Guess what? That's not our audience. Right?
Definitely
right?
no.
They could go stay and watch that YouTube channel with a pie and pieing you in the face and me in the face and go over there for 70 minutes.
You mean we're not going to have, in addition to Sunday with Charles and Charles Ortel closing in, we won't have Charles Ortel in a bathtub full of fruit?
That I can very definitely assure you. That would frighten whole bunches of people around the world.
That would be the most popular show on Crowdsource.
I don't think so.
Well, until we can get that major foundation that is totally unbiased, I do like the model that I'm using here on Crowdsource the Truth, where the audience, the people, the Crowdsource community, it's broken into sort of micro sponsorships so that no one is facing the financial burden of having to pay lots and lots of money, and everyone can be assured that there's no particular interest that's being unduly served. And it's been working pretty well. We've had some growth on Patreon. People can go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and sponsor the program. We're coming up towards the end of the month, so now is the most important time for people to sponsor. And we really do need the funds to keep things going. We've got some travel planned in the future, and even doing stuff like going to see Dr. Corsi and doing those types of interviews, or car rental and things like that. Costs money, so it's great when people can become monthly sponsors or even do a one-time sponsorship at paypal.me/crowdsource the truth.
Absolutely. So once again, that art department, you know, I mean, they're just, before every show, they call me up and they say, compliment us. We need a raise. But this one, it's very funny. When I look at this, I typically look at it first on my phone, and all I got was this center thing. And I'm like, Jason, who always talks about how the poster has to immediately grab the attention of, like, that's pretty damn subtle, just the center of it. It's like, what? You know? But why don't you say, Jason, what is that? What's happening with that building? What is that?
Well, this was a really interesting one, I thought, because, you know, you wanted to do OBAMAGATE as a sort of a play on Watergate, of course, because everything that's going on right now, I think we all agree, is like multiple factors worse than Watergate. And of course, the famous movie Stargate that became the show SG-1. And I also thought it was a nice tie-in to some of the research that Quinn Michaels has done with the whole particle collider network, which, by the inventor's own writing, Enrico Fermi, he wanted to open a gateway to another dimension, which as I recall, is what that movie was about. So this was a nice, there's a lot of different treatments for the artwork from the original poster, but it's basically always a pyramid inside this Stargate. And of course, what we've shown here is the artist's rendering of the Barack Obama Presidential Library that will be built in Chicago, which this illustration doesn't actually even do it justice. It's quite pyramidal in its appearance, with almost like the point chopped off so as to fool you. But we've also included, of course, former presidents B-Rock, Barry Obama, and Wild Bill Clinton there.
Wild Bullock.
Wild Bullock Clinton. And they're both sort of in their ethereal forms contemplating many, many years in jail. Hopefully.
Well, so, you know, here's the way, this is the reason I did not go to art school, other than just totally sucking at it. I look at this, and my crazy mind says Easter Island head.
Right.
You know, and then it's very interesting, because that could be the Easter Island head, that view, but then it also looks like a side view of the Easter Island head. You know, that's the eye.
That's very good, Charles. That's almost like a Rorschach. You know, my very favorite artist is Salvador Dali. Maybe I've told you that. But Dali's fascination was the manipulation of perception. So seeing all those different things is fascinating. And then, of course, we've got these hieroglyphics here, which I felt also tied in to Quinn's most recent research about the coded messages in letters from Richard Dawson's wife to their son that tie into the Zodiac murders. And we don't even need to get into the time phone hacking aspect of it.
Again.
Right. But it was an interesting little piece of artwork that inspires so many things, and it will take you a million light years from home, hopefully to a federal penitentiary.
Right. Well, you know, just a few thoughts on the issue of Stargate and doors.
Yes.
You know, I'm the kind of person who, if I heard that you open that door, it might take you a million light years from home, I'd keep that sucker closed, right? Because the history, the simple way to think about history is, you know, when a technologically advanced civilization meets a civilization that may not be quite as advanced, the one that's not quite as advanced typically gets eaten, you know, and that would be us.
Right.
You know, you open that door, it's like, hey, the food's ready. And everybody comes, you know, from a million light years away and, you know, starts eating us.
So you're thinking if the exit portal for the Stargate is somewhere beyond like 72nd Street, you're not going.
I'm not 72nd. Are you kidding me?
Forget it.
I'm not going past the north exit of Grand Central except to go to the Racket Club, which is fun. And the other thing I'd mention is, you know, we're going to be talking a lot about it here. And I want to give a big shout out to Utrice Lead, who is doing well. She's got some health issues, but all the best to her. We had a really good show today from 1 to 2 p.m. But when you think about the history of the bad blood between the Obamas and the Clintons, I don't know if you remember this history, but during the primary season, was it during the primary season? During the heat of the primary season in 2008, Bill Clinton was getting madder and madder that Teddy Kennedy would not support Hillary Clinton. And he thought that he'd seal the deal. He probably had like 7 too many bourbons or whatever he drinks. And he calls up Ted Kennedy and he says, listen, you know, in so many words, he said, you got to understand, you know, 10 years ago, this guy would have been bringing us coffee, referring to...
Wasn't that Hillary who said that?
No, it was Bill.
Wow.
To Ted Kennedy to try to get Kennedy, you know, the point was that Obama didn't really have any national political credentials to speak of.
Right.
Now, Hillary's national political credentials, I don't think we want to speak of, but, you know, to say something like that...
It's so racist.
When you're from, you know, it's just wrong to say something like that about anyone. But to think, you know, this guy, in theory, Bill, when he was president, you know, the economy was booming. He gets credit for that. He's not supposed to be stupid. To think that you could go to like, I mean, I guess, but I mean, to think that you would go to Ted Kennedy, the lion spelled without an O of the Senate, and believe that you're going to, I mean, because to say what you want about Ted Kennedy, he really was passionate.
Bad driver? Oh.
He was definitely a bad driver. Wasn't so good with women either. But he was truly passionate about trying to do stuff for minorities and African Americans, et cetera. To think that, you know, there's really going to be an unguarded moment where you say, hey, you know, I'm from the South. We talk like this. I mean, and to think that that kind of comment wouldn't get back to Barack Obama, which of course it did.
Yeah.
And that immediately, Bill says that, immediately Ted Kennedy goes out and endorses Barack Obama, and Hillary goes down the loo, as they say in England. You know, so we have to look at this recent history, and we have to say, you know, with great cynicism, this is something that I was talking about with you, Trees, Americans and people around the world are prone to suspend their natural disbelief about big problems. You know, that's why magic works. You just you say, well, you know, I'm not going to notice the obvious strings on that dollar bill that's floating up in the air, right? So with this mess, we have in the Clintons, if they did nothing else right, what they did was pioneer the art of the war room, and that is basically, you know, getting a whole bunch of starry-eyed volunteers together to go through the dirt on the opposition and understand what all the dirt might be on the opposition, see how to protect yourself from a dirt storm. I'll stay out of using the word. And, you know, so here's people who, you know, were studying their opponents all the time that Bill was president of the United States. We know that they got some FBI files. We don't know how many they actually got. We don't know how much they went into the IRS. We don't know what Sandy Berger was actually doing. But we definitely know that Bill Clinton and Hillary and the people around them were expert on the war room. And
Yeah.
we definitely know...
And opposition research, they love that.
Right, and so they certainly would have done work on Barack Obama, whether they did it when he was president or when they used the Clinton Foundation or the Clinton campaign to do it when it seemed like he was catching fire.
Yeah.
We know that they would have had their eye on this guy. Certainly by the time he was chastising, you know, Ted Kennedy for not making a decision, right? So knowing that, we have to wonder what sort of dirt did the Clintons have on Barack Obama, and what may they have held over his head? You know, we'll talk about this in a little more detail, but you think about, and this is what I was talking about with you, Trees, you think about how much of a battle it was for Barack Obama to come literally out of nowhere and to destroy the Clintons, who were saying, Daniel Halper wrote about this in his book, Clinton, Inc., which is a very good book, that it was the standard mode. What she did with her Senate race, I'm going to be the nominee. You know, this was basically the way she went out to the other fundraisers. You know, other people were giving money to other candidates.
Yeah.
And you know what happens to people who cross me, right? Because I'm going to be the nominee.
Vince Foster.
You know, you can't do that, I guess. So, right? So you know what happens when I get cheesed off, right? So I'm going to be the nominee, and then I'm going to kick some Republican ass, and then I'm going to be the president. And that's the kind of speech I believe more or less went out to the Democratic glitterati. And, you know, notwithstanding all that, Barack Obama said, that's
Not
nothing.
going to happen.
I mean, you're talking Little Rock, Manhattan, I'm Chicago, you know, and he trounced her, crushed her. And, you know, so how do you explain having done that, because that actually happened, by June of 2008. Yet, by January 21st or whatever, you've got Hillary Clinton, the outward-facing voice of the Obama administration to the whole world. You've got a memorandum of understanding, which means Jack Diddley is not enforceable. Bill Clinton's name is not on it. It does not, guarantee that the relations between the Secretary of State.
Well, no memorandum of understanding has any legal bearing ever.
Right, but especially one that doesn't even have the name of the person who might be doing all the corrupting.
It's like the most worthless example of a worthless document ever.
That must have been negotiated by Doug Benn. But wait, it was.
Is he a lawyer, Doug Benn?
They say. I mean, he must be good at something. He just bought David Rockefeller's house at a knockdown price, $20 million.
Wow.
Down from
but he is a lawyer, huh?
I believe, member of the Florida bar.
Boy, I mean, that just goes to show you sometimes. That's like lawyers, doctors, and auto mechanics. You just don't know when you've got a bad one until it's too late.
Well, as my father is always fond of saying, in any class, there's a bottom half.
Right.
And some of them do graduate.
Now, here's a serious question. So a lot of people have always attributed the Barack Obama birth certificate controversy to Donald Trump or to Dr. Corsi or something like that. But isn't it true that Sidney Blumenthal was the first one to bring up the...
My understanding is that Jerry Corsi was encouraged to go on this project by people close to the Clintons. That's my understanding. Now, maybe we'll never...
Because Dr. Corsi's been at the center of it for sure. But I mean, in my view, all the evidence that they've presented, the document is a digital forgery. It doesn't tell us anything about where Barack Obama was actually born or whether he's American or not American, but that birth certificate document on whitehouse.gov is a forgery.
And you say that as an expert on
Photoshop. I'm a
Photoshop.
digital imaging expert. I've been in this field for 31 years. I have a lot of technical knowledge, and I would trade info with the best of the best. Everything that Mike Zullo concluded, I independently came to those conclusions before I ever saw his investigation.
Right, I think that's excellent stuff. And I would say to the crowd, to remind the crowd, Jason's being modest. He's an award-winning 3D expert, lots of credentials. He knows his stuff here. But what I would say on this is actually so that we don't get attacked for opening that box. What I would say is slightly different. Let's put yourself in the mindset of the first African-American president of the United States who had Bill Clinton say, in whenever it was, April, May, June of 2008, what he said, who had, after a truce was negotiated in June of 2008, wakes up one day to see the New Yorker magazine cover of Michelle and Barack Obama dressed as terrorists inside the White House.
Yeah.
That didn't happen by accident. And you finally beat, muddled brain John McCain in the general election, and now you're going to be the president of the United States. And guess what? The world is blowing up. It literally is blowing up, near total, disaster around the world. So who are you going to pick on your team? Who do you want as your most trusted advisor? You got all kinds of foreign policy crises. You pick Hillary Clinton to be your Secretary of State? That don't make no sense. You pick Eric Holder, the person who let the Mark Rich pardon through as your Attorney General?
Yeah.
You go down the list of the various people who were inserted in, you have this MOU that doesn't do anything to fix the Clinton Foundation conflicts. You go down the list of these decisions. You let the Clinton machine operate with private servers and devices that are not registered. You let her use alias emails. It does not add up. Okay, you're the president of the United States. You're the leader of the free world. I don't like the fact that he won. I actually think he probably, as bad as he was, he's probably better than John McCain would have been. Yeah. For different reasons, which is saying something. Yeah. But the fact, it just doesn't add up. And I know the mainstream press, is in major league suck-up mode. But, this is, for somebody who sort of enjoys amateur mystery solving, this is a mystery here. It does not explain. This is a proud person, Barack Obama. The way he behaved and strutted around, a very proud individual, you would have thought he would say, listen, and the people around him would have said, yeah, I trust Hillary Clinton about as far as I'll throw whatever book she just wrote, which you could throw that one pretty far because it's so light. But
it's thicker than Comey's.
Yeah, right. We got to measure it in British thermal units or something else.
I mean, not to digress, and I know I do all the time, but I really feel like all these book writing deals, it's just like that's the known, like, open cover to here's your $10 million advance, Mr. Comey. Just write a bunch of nonsense, or we've got a bunch of people who can pound out a 200-page book in a weekend, and we'll put that out and put you in Barnes & Noble, have Laura Loomer yell at you and run you out the back door.
Well, that's why I say, and you're not going off tangent here. I mean, if we're going to bring regulations into the 21st century, catching up or trying to anticipate even the flow of technology, it seems a simple principle is you must disclose, not this baloney financial statements that the politicians disclose, but a rigorous, toughly independently audited financial statement with any changes happening during the year included. And you must, there cannot be these sweetheart deals where you say, to somebody like Hillary Clinton, okay, you're such a lousy speaker and you're such a lousy writer that we're going to give you a $10 million advance so you can pay $200,000 to some idiot to write the book and say that you wrote it, and then go around in the Scooby-Doo mobile, right before the speech, and then we'll give you another $200,000 speech to say utter gibberish, to your adoring group of fans. I mean, that's just not something that should be allowed. You shouldn't be allowed to have this fake firm on the side, Teneo, where Doug Bann gets to charge Coca-Cola $1 million a month for doing sweet F all.
Well, maybe he's got Chris Gowan bringing the Diet Cokes to Bill Clinton. Charles, Hillary Clinton has a speaking engagement coming up. This is bizarre to me. It's in the Spark Arena, which is a gigantic, like Eric Clapton style, maybe Maroon 5 would go there. But Spark Arena in like New Zealand or something, she's going to be speaking there. Why would people want to see Hillary Clinton?
I can't imagine anybody who would be dumb enough to want to go all the way to New Zealand. There's nobody I know who would even think about doing that.
But the people who are in New Zealand are apparently going to fill this gigantic place to go see Hillary Clinton yammer on about whose fault it was that she lost the election. I wonder who she'll blame it on. But it looks like a gigantic place. You could have this superb owl in there.
Well, I think, the thing of it is, and I understand actually New Zealand is a wonderful place that if you like nature and you like, nothing around you and lots of sheep and,
Kim.com.
And Kim.com. And maybe they have they have lamb, pretty good lamb and butter. So you can have buttered lamb sandwiches.
And Harmon Wilford is there.
He
there. Could go see Hillary Clinton at Spark Arena. They'll shoot him the second he gets there.
That's right.
I hope not.
Yeah, but you're sitting there. It's May. Actually, the other thing is, I believe that time of year. Not that it's freezing, but I think that's their winter.
Oh, yeah, right. Other side of the.
Yeah, I may have that wrong, but I don't know how the currents work and if there's the equivalent of a Gulf Stream over there. But
the final thing I want to bring up before we get to the slides, just this whole concept of opposition research. Like, that sounds like you're actually like legitimately researching and uncovering facts that just happen to be about the opposition. But it seems in practice to be much more the invention of nonsense that hurts the opposition.
Right. And the manipulation of it. I think, on the subject we've talked about, YouTube channel striking, and when you think about the apertures that are controlled by sympathizers of globalists and corruption, it's YouTube, it's Twitter, it's Facebook, and then it's the editorial rooms, of the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, and a limited number, and a few of the top shows that nobody watches any of the Sunday shows anymore. But
except for Sunday with Charles.
That's right. They're all.
That's why they hate us, for real. Because if you're not on board with their program, whatever however they get you to do it, they want you to shut up.
Well, that's why we scheduled it at 3 p.m. out of deference to the people who want to go out. From when I was younger, and had a reason to carouse, Saturday was my night.
Right.
Friday, I was always tired. I go to sleep early. But Saturday, man, I'd be up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. So you want to be able to sleep through the Sunday shows, have a brunch,
Yep.
You know, get the Bloody Mary picture out there, and you know, live tweet Sunday with Charles starting
There
at
you
3
go.
p.m.
There
You're
you go.
golden, unless you live in the
Perfect.
West Coast. You know, but
Oh, well, then, you know, Joe Napoli is watching it at noon before he hits the links.
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So we actually covered some of this. I might have known that this slide was coming. But what we try to do here, ladies and gentlemen, is we try to lay out, so you can go back and just look at the first page, what it is we're actually going to be talking about through the balance of these slides. This one, I have to say, Jason and I have both been extremely busy, and today I was only able to put this together. I only devoted 2 hours to this.
Whoa.
And so that was all I could do. But I believe I might know the subject a little bit, so it was easier for me to, I wasn't starting from a standing start. My point here is, and it's a point we've been drilling home a long time ago. In fact, I even did, when I was writing for the Washington Times, I did a piece when, I believe it was, I forget when it was, where I said that, I think it might have been in, I'll have to check, it was early on, it might have been as far back as even in 2012, where I said that what was going on vis-a-vis Benghazi was worse than Watergate.
Yeah.
You know, and if you think about what really likely happened under Obama, we had the apparatus of the CIA or the intelligence services, the FBI and the intelligence services. I believe they were weaponized against perceived opponents of the regime. They certainly went after James Rosen. There are allegations they spied on the Senate and the House and the Supreme Court, and certainly a whole raft of journalists. And that is something that, you know, unless we get hit, God forbid, by an EMP or something like it, technology is going to get more and more powerful and intrusive. People are stupidly going to let those Alexa things into their house and whatever what comes next. And next thing you know, it'll be, you come home and it'll be like, you know, a bad ex-girlfriend. There's like, there's no building, and even if there were a building, there are no clothes, there's nothing of your stuff is there because the Alexa robot's just going to say, hey, he's asleep. Roll up the moving truck, you know. So,
but it's an interesting point because we really, as regular people, just like as a computer user, you've told me the story about how you bought your first laptop and tried to install the software by like,
I deserve that. I'll tell the story.
But I'm just saying, like, it's difficult for the average person to anticipate what the applications would become. I mean, the phone, the iPhone or the Android phone, it's essentially the same thing. Central processing unit, screen, memory, storage, processing, applications. It's the same thing. But for an average user to have looked at that computer in 1982 or 3 and said, oh, well, someday this will be a ubiquitous device that everybody carries, and it's difficult to anticipate. And this Alexa is sort of everybody's, and Siri and all these things, it's your introduction to AI and the mining of all of your data and activities and the listening to everything you do.
That's not going to happen in my house.
It's happening. Well, maybe not in your house.
Not my house.
You got the phone, you got the TV, they're listening.
I know, that's going to be changing soon. But anyway, yeah, so what we're going to be talking today about is the fact that you know, once the blinders finally come off, and it's going to be difficult to rip them off fake yappers' eyes, and you know, the folks down at, forget about the folks at CNN, Jeff Zucker and those people, they're just going to have to find another line of work. But once the blinders finally do come off, and I think they're coming off the American population at large, people are going to wake up and say, you know what, we have been sold a gigantic turd of goods, not bill of goods, turd of goods.
Bill of turds.
Right. And you know, in the case of Watergate, I remember Watergate, I had my first serious summer job working, of all places, Simpson Thatcher.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was the summer of '74. And
Doug was impressed by that.
that I worked? Or
the Watergate aspect.
Right. And so I remember thinking this was amazing. And the revelations truly were amazing. And this is nothing. I think Chuck Colson, you know, who meddled, I think he was the one who meddled with IRS records, went to prison for 4 years or something for doing that. Here we may have had a situation where the Obama Justice Department under Eric Holder and the IRS got together and in advance of the 2010 midterm election said, we can't let anything like the Tea Party happen, and decided to, you know, really go hard against people with money who might be supporting the Tea Party. And then the Tea Party itself, I mean, for that alone, a lot of people, Lois Lerner, if you're listening, don't even think about going to Brazil because we're going to get you. one way or another. You're going to do jail time, I think. And the people around Lois Lerner should do jail time. And Eric Holder, you may be thinking about running for president.
Forget it.
Check the time phone hack OBAMAGATE Stargate device, because the only place you're going to be doing that is 1 million light years from now. You're not doing it in the United States of America, I don't think.
I like it that you put Lois Lerner on blast there. She has done a lot of incredible things.
And she didn't do that by accident. I mean, the
Right.
whole bunch of people. I think what happened is, I remember Rahm Emanuel was quoted as saying under Clinton, executive orders are pretty cool, man. Stroke of a pen, change the law. And I imagine there are a bunch of people who, the same people who said, you know what, now that you're President, Barack, why don't we check out the Statue of Liberty in Air Force One? Remember when that happened? The Air Force One buzzed around Manhattan.
I don't remember.
Yeah, right after he got elected. I remember. I mean, and it was no one's ever explained exactly who was on that jet and why they were flying so low over Manhattan. That's not something we like here in Manhattan after 9/11.
No.
And I think they may have regarded it as just sort of like a plaything. We do what we want. The rules don't apply to us. No one's ever going to check. We got this done.
Yeah.
And they shot the moon. They figured they'd break all the rules.
Right.
And that they anoint their successor, and nobody would ever know. Got that one wrong.
Yeah, that's the way it's gone for so long. I think they were just overly confident in the ability to do that.
Right. So if we go to the next page, and we're going to keep this under 2 hours, I promise. This is the standard disclaimer, and what we've done here, this is a bit of a special presentation. I thought that it might be useful to put out some of the ways in which, before I mentioned Jason, we were trying to spread the word in alternative media. There were some people who were very helpful. Utrice Lead and Gary Null on Progressive Radio Network were very helpful. John Batchelor on WABC Radio was very helpful.
Sorry to interrupt, but we should give Utrice a shout out. How do people find Utrice Lead Stories in there?
Well, is it just in?
Well, we do have that. We could go right to that now if you want,
Sure.
because I don't know if you're aware of this, Charles, but you were on Lead Stories.
No, that wasn't me.
It wasn't you. Oh, that's why we played that song all the time. But
I'm trying to pretend I'm Hillary Clinton. That wasn't me.
So if you go to leadstories.podbean.com, you can follow Utrice Lead, and then she's got a link here to the Progressive Radio Network where you're frequently appearing with her, and certainly our best wishes go out to Utrice for her to get well and overcome whatever health issues she's dealing with right now.
Yeah, but the thing about Utrice that I really have enjoyed, and I don't know how many different times I've been on her show, it's a lot, is that we go all over the place, different places. She likes to have these Friday sessions, Speak Your Mind, Free Your Mind Friday, where people call in, and those are actually a real treat. We did a bunch of those. It's a progressive audience, and I wouldn't say, even with all the exposure that I've had on that channel, I wouldn't think of myself as a progressive per se.
No.
Yeah, not so much. But
there's commonalities, right? Anti-war and responsible spending and that kind of thing.
Anti-corruption.
Yeah.
And those who try to divide us are doing that so that they can get you to buy stupid bumper stickers and go to the $10,000 or $100, whatever it is, go to the stupid speech in Spark Center in New Zealand so you can buy one of these stupid books. It suits that the establishment to have an artificial divide,
right,
when they're really certainly on the issues of the deep state, on charity fraud, on reforming academia, on not wasting money either on foreign aid or on education inside this country and the poor communities, whether they be urban or rural. There's a lot of common interest, but there's also great financial motivation to have this artificial divide and let Congress throw money around. $500 million a month.
Wow.
Is basically, we spend $6 trillion a year all in on government. That's $500 million a month.
It's good work if you can get it, Charles.
I'm telling you. But so what we try to do here is we're trying to use the tools that are available in a different way to reach out to the people in the audience. We love your comments. I'm getting a lot of comments there. They're very helpful. Forgive me if I can't respond to all of them, but I really appreciate getting them, even critical ones. And you can do that through my, there's a way to contact me through my website. The playlist, Jason, is probably worth pulling up.
Sure. The playlist has actually become even more important now, Charles, because after all of these malicious anonymous strikes on the original Crowdsource the Truth channel, we've bounced around. Of course, the original Crowdsource the Truth channel was my old YouTube channel, and then we had to use the YouTube channel from my 3D production company, and now we're on to Crowdsource the Truth too. So it's been a little confusing for our regular viewers to find the broadcasts all the time, but if people just search for Crowdsource for Sunday with Charles, they will come to this handy dandy playlist, and we're on the 70th show we've done.
Yeah, and I think you should probably subcategorize them. And this would be the Fright Night one, the Fright Night collection, the Halloween.
Yeah,
that's going to scare children under the age of 60.
Right. The image, yes, it's haunting.
And I don't know, they were trying to, I didn't even put this link in, and you may not have seen it today, but apparently in Amy Chozik's book, which is actually, could be kind of interesting, they're trying to sell the softer side of Hillary Clinton, claiming that she loves to flirt. There's a flirty side to Hillary Clinton.
Oh, boy.
And she especially likes to flirt with straight men. And I put that in the category of
comedy?
Yeah.
Horror?
That's not happening. That never happened.
Now, what is this book? It's Chasing Hillary, 10 Years, 2 Presidential Campaigns, 1 Intact Glass Ceiling. Is that the name of it?
That's the book. That happened. It was released yesterday.
Oh, but this doesn't remotely sound like a positive Hillary Clinton book.
Well, Amy Chozik was, I think she was at the Wall Street Journal, and then she went to the New York Times, and she was actually somebody with Nick Confessor who wrote that story, Unease at the Clinton Foundation over finances and something or other, that I saw in August of 2013.
What's it called? On Your Knees at the Clinton Foundation? That's a different book.
Yeah, that's a different book. Yeah.
Sorry, Charles.
Yeah, that's the intern. That's the Clinton intern program. But anyway, if we get back into the rhythm here a little bit,
sorry,
that's okay. And go back to the slide page.
Right.
We have this disclaimer out there for a reason. Those of you who are watching around the world that don't have the protection of the First Amendment, we still do. And what we try to say on the show, other than when we're joking around, is all based on hard analysis, and we try to provide as much as possible the links so that you, the viewers, can go and do the kind of work that is important to do to make informed judgments. We can all shoot from the hip. That's how the students get away with pretending that they were actually educated at most universities because they listen to the professors who don't know what they're talking about. But here, what we try to do, and what I think it's so important to do to separate fact from fiction, is to first understand the difference between fact and fiction. Yeah. And then once you do, go and follow these leads that we provide for you. And not everything's perfect, but we give you a sense of where we're finding the undergirding for our arguments. And you can see it for yourself. And maybe you'll see a mistake. If so, we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, and real quickly, Agent 99, one of our avid followers who's always watching, she's asking if the gentleman who spoke with you outside of the James Comey book event, who was both a CPA and an attorney, has he contacted you? Ixnay
on that one, and he never will.
Yeah,
I mean, the funny thing, and it's going to sound like I'm bragging, and I'm not bragging, I'm just explaining the way I was trained. When I got into business at 24 years old, went into work for this investment bank, Dillon Reed, that doesn't exist anymore. We had a long roster of very big clients, and I got the opportunity over the course of 11 years to fly around the world and work on projects with CEOs and their top people, hiring the best experts. The way it typically worked is the bankers then had the upper hand. We would hire the law firms. Typically on big deals, the managing partner of a law firm would work for me when I was maybe a vice president.
And even that guy was an idiot.
No, those are very smart people, but they would, I'm leading a deal as a vice president, senior vice president, whatever, it's a big deal. The managing partner and very senior partners are actually working for you.
Right.
And the accountants were basically way down the track. We didn't really like most of what they were doing. We would bring them in occasionally. They're not that impressive. For this guy to lead with, I'm an accountant and an attorney, but I know nothing about charity fraud, and that's why I have such strong opinions. That caught my attention. Plus, I'm not a hugger, as you know, and I really don't like perfect strangers coming up to me and touching me.
He was getting in your space.
He was trying to get in my grill.
I think he was an employee of BKD, possibly.
I think he was bounced out of BKD.
Yeah. All right.
So if we jump right into it, we have here this, and I want to go through not every one of these. We'll talk about them. We won't pull them all up, but the first one I want to pull up because, this is. Here I'm saying that the mainstream press, anything they can find out about Trump they want to see. But when it comes to Obama, it's like, transcripts? I don't need those.
We don't need no stinking transcripts.
Benghazi? Why would anybody care what was happening at Benghazi? I mean, it was a cartoon. Everybody knows it was a cartoon. I mean, on the other hand, here we have the Associated Press demanding access to the records that Mueller just seized. I think this includes Michael Cohen's records and all these other. What right does the Associated Press have to see the records of a special prosecutor? That's not the way it works. You have, there shouldn't be a special counsel or whatever, and now a grand jury proceeding if there is one, and the press looking at this stuff that may or may not, before it goes to a grand jury, go to the grand jury.
It's got to be sealed, doesn't it?
I mean, you can't do this. And here's the AP falling over itself saying, because there's no collusion. We know there's no collusion. That story fell flat on its face. We've been at this now for 2 years or so. We had 8 years of saying, Barack Obama would sit there and, drop something in the in the punch bowl that doesn't smell too good, and the press would go, "That's fantastic," And here we have, the AP saying we absolutely have to go there, and this is a major league story at 2:00 this afternoon. It's getting a lot of coverage in the press. It's absurd. This guy, I think, this guy needs to be investigated. In fact.
Yeah.
So we go back into the slides. Now, on the second one here, I'm going to clue the audience in and you into. There's a very highly sophisticated methodology of analysis that I learned at Harvard Business School and perfected in investment banking, right? And it's I just want to get this right. Well, we could pull up the link, the National Review link.
Now,
and you look here, and it's the question of, did people vote for Donald Trump? Because I know what it is. It's a very famous analysis. Many PhDs have been gotten for it. It's the famous stole suck analysis, right? Did the Russians steal the election? Or did Hillary Clinton just suck as a candidate?
Yeah.
And that's the basic question for the ages in 2016. No, Donald Trump didn't steal the election, and yes, Hillary Clinton sucked as a candidate.
Charles, this is a wonderful example of a picture speaking 1,000 words. Yeah. All the press around her, the sour face, strung her together, and she's at the center of this.
And she's sitting there, I really don't want to have to be doing this. Why do we have to have a campaign anyway? I'm 50 points ahead in my head. Why am I on this plane? We don't have to campaign. Everyone stay home and I'll just, show up on January 20th at noon. So if we go into the actual, and then what happened here, this is really a big thing. Kanye West, the Federalist, I have to say, I get in trouble saying what I think, but that's the way I roll. I think his music sucks. I'm not an expert on music, although my mother was an expert on a very different kind of music, Johann Sebastian Bach. He may be a great entertainer. His music stinks, in my opinion. But for this guy to come out and say what he said, backing Candace Owens, who I think is absolutely correct. Candace says that, famously, that African Americans and other minorities shouldn't see themselves as victims, but as potential victors. And I know that's, rhyming, sort of, whatever, but it's true. People will tell you, and the sport, it's obviously not, everyone doesn't play this sport, but In tennis, people will tell you, when I was playing as a youngster, that at a certain, it doesn't take hard to get to the level where you could actually win a big tournament. What separates people, who are talented from others who become winners is a winning attitude. The idea that you go in and you're going to win. When you start thinking of yourself as a winner, you will eventually win if you have talent. Me thinking of myself as a winner as an artist, that ain't going to happen. But if you pick, if I pick something that has to do with numbers or something like that, and I decide I'm going to win at it, I will win. And so to take a generation of minority kids, now several generations, and to encourage them to think of themselves as always as victims, as deserving of handouts, and this
super predators, as Hillary called them.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do that. And for Kanye West to stand up, it's so wonderful he's standing up and doubling down now. He was harshly criticized for defending Candace Owens. And he's doubling down now. And I think he is, on this one, he's absolutely right. Maybe he has other flaws, but on this point, it's so right. I remember, in a different moment, I remember my first day at this elitist school, Horace Mann, where I was, years old I was 12 years old or something like that. We go in the first meeting of classes as all school assembly. No, I think it was just the 7th grade assembly. And before us, we had some writer, I forget which one it was a graduate of the school, who was honored. And then the headmaster got up and he gave us a speech about, you are special people, you're gonna go out, you're gonna do great things, we're gonna invest in your mind and your training and this and that. You should think of school as a treasure and a privilege. We're there for you. Now, little did I know what was really going on at Horace Mann when I was there.
What was?
Remember the whole teachers were going after some of the students. But
I didn't know about that.
No, that's all over the New York Times. But
when was that?
68 to 74.
Oh, I wasn't even alive.
Yeah, well, that's why I forgive you. How could you have known? You probably weren't even a concept at that point. But anyway, but you take young children, you don't want to do that. You don't want to take somebody who has no prayer of being a basketball star and saying, you're going to be the center for the Knicks when you're 5'2". I mean, that's not going to happen. But, everyone's got some talents.
Right.
And you can say to somebody, look, find what you think will help you figure out what you're going to be talented in, and then think of yourself as a winner pursuing this talent. It shouldn't be serial killing. It should be something that's productive. But and Kanye West and the people who are beginning to open their eyes and speak up deserve enormous credit. This could actually be a turning point out on the West Coast, here in New York and Chicago and these other places, these elitists. We have these idiots walking around with their scruffy beards and their woolen hats and looking at their cell phones with their earbuds in. You're talking about being social justice warriors with $200,000 of student loans, and you're grumbling that they can't get ahead in life. Shave your beard, get rid of the hat, figure out what you're good at. Forget about,
What are their goals, Charles?
Yeah, what are their loans? Anyway, but I actually think in history, if this plays out the way it could play out, this is a big moment here. Because as Candace said a couple nights ago on Hannity, she said, people need to understand that if the black vote goes 5% more to Trump, the Democratic Party is finished. Because the Democratic Party has been taking the black vote and the minority vote for granted.
I'll tell you what, Charles, I've spoken to quite a few black people who are pro-Donald Trump, and they're reluctant to discuss it among their black friends because they just get immediately slammed. And there's even people who I've interviewed on the streets of New York, black people, who one guy was wearing a Make America Great hat, and all of these other minorities, black and other races, started yelling at the guy for liking Trump. And I was like, you guys are being racist. He doesn't have to dislike Trump because he's black.
Well, I'll give it, maybe we'll even figure out how to do this ourselves with Don Newen, who can do the music. But I used to go to this McDonald's on 14th Street, and I think I told you the story. I was sitting there minding my own business, and I sensed this big presence. And I kind of look up, and there's a towering African-American guy with a security hat on. I'd seen him in there before. And he looks at me, "You voting for Trump?"
Thought, the McDonald's security is
no,
checking.
he was a patron who happened to work nearby. And I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be a rough question to answer. What do I do? And I didn't vote. People know that I did not vote in 2016. because I was so involved in trying to expose the Clinton Foundation fraud, I didn't want people to be able to say, you know, he's got a point of view, he's a partisan. I did not vote.
Oh.
But at that time, you know, I said, yes. You know? And he's like, right on!
Wow.
Fist pump, and he goes, you know, we used to have an expression where I live, you know, Trump was the man, you know. People would like to say, I'm trumping it, I'm living large.
Right. I
You
mean,
know, so for Kanye, we could do some lyrics, you know, stop chumping it, I'm trumping it. You know, that's the kind of stuff, right? We get something going along those lines.
Trump was actually in a bunch of different hip hop songs,
Was he?
like before he ran for president. People thought he was great. I mean, there were Dennis Rodman is friends with Trump. He was on the Apprentice and everything. I still say they should make Dennis Rodman the ambassador to North Korea.
Yeah, well, we could always disagree about it.
He's friends with Kim. I
Well,
mean, why not?
the one thing I would say about Trump, which is, you know, he's certainly comfortable in his own skin.
Yep.
And
Even when he's doing weird stuff like brushing dandruff off Macron.
Yeah. So, well, they had an expression at this snooty firm I work for that you know you're a top banker when you can in a meeting in front of other people tell the CEO that his fly is open.
Yeah.
And there is an element of that if you're, you know, you have a strong relationship with somebody if you can do that. But I think there might have been a few people watching that episode. So. But, you know, the thing that's happened, and Hillary and even Obama are going to find out just how fickle the public is. They ain't cool no more. You know, they're just not cool. And
They're the MySpace.
exactly, they're the MySpace. And you look at this CNBC hit, like here. Here's this Clinton fundraiser lady, and they're covering it on CNBC of all things, right? After there's this viral video of this fundraiser losing it. I guess you got to keep the ad blocker on or something.
Sorry. Well, you know, because otherwise we get hit with a million ads all the time.
Well, you let the people can watch it for themselves if they.
We got it here. We
Okay.
got another way to do everything.
All right, but yeah, thank you. I mean, we don't have to pull this up unless we can hear the sound.
Yep.
We can, okay.
Oh, well, the audience will.
All right, but it's supposedly damn funny. Not good for this lady who had to resign. But this is typical of the attitude of the people around the Clintons. They just think they're way above the law, and that's why this. You know, that's why. Look at her body language. She's talking to a bunch of cops having been pulled over. Right.
My daughter was in the car.
And look at her attitude.
Increasingly agitated.
I'm a conservative, I'm friend of the mayor, I've been in Tenafly for 20 years.
For 20 years.
And the guys are like, yeah.
They should have treated her like they treat everybody else, like throw her down, knee to her back.
Right. Yeah, put her in the drunk tank.
It didn't really play her audio too much.
All right. Well, but the point here is that this is the way you know, people in the Republican side act as well like this. You know, they get very full of themselves, but that's not the concept. That's not the concept of American governance. That, you know, everybody in American government works for we the people, and they need to remember that. And I think that Donald Trump Donald Trump certainly has a global-sized ego, but you know, much of what he's doing, he's working in theory for free. We could debate that.
Did he donate the money or something?
Oh, he is. He's donating all his salary to charity, and people will quibble and maybe
Not the Clinton Foundation, I hope.
I hope not. Yeah, that ain't happening.
Because he could get himself into some tax trouble if he does that.
But
And then Rachel Maddow would have an episode.
That'd be pretty funny. I hope she gave the Clinton Foundation. I know Stephanopoulos did, or as somebody calls
Can
it.
we get his tax return from the New York Times?
I doubt it, but as somebody called him, Clintonopolis. But
Clintonopolis.
but I don't know if you can pull up New York Times.
Yep.
Yeah. So I only watched, because I was quite busy, a little bit of this. But just let's stay on this picture for a second, okay? Remember the whole thing about all these, after Donald Trump won, designer after designer said, oh, I'm not going to dress Melania Trump. I never do that. You know, wow,
Yeah.
how did she manage to find clothes for that state dinner? I mean, it's just, and this picture does not do justice to the gown that she wore, not even remotely a fashion expert. But this is, it was just a stunning, you know, gown, and beyond that, the pictures that I saw of the event itself, it's worth noting, I believe that Michelle Obama expanded her staff to be 30 people or so. She cut her staff down to 10. Michelle used outside consultants. She did not for this dinner. They had would have these gigantic state dinners where you felt like you were in a crowd. This was very small and intimate. And I think, let's stop with the nonstop 24/7 hate Trump mania, and let's start appreciating how special it is. Here's Melania Trump was not born in this country. She made it on her own before she made the decision to marry Donald Trump.
Yeah.
She has been conducting herself with style and grace.
Yeah.
She, for example, to the Bush funeral, I thought, not that I'm a huge fan of those people, but I thought it was very touching that she arranged for people who had served in the Bush White House, H.W. White House, and the W. White House to fly down and as her guests, flying with her to that funeral. She's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
And she's not out there, trying to rip everybody a new one who doesn't believe in whatever she believes in. She didn't grow up in this country.
Very well educated. A lot of people
Speak-
might not know.
Speaks 5 languages, and half the American electorate can't speak English.
Right.
And looks down their noses at this Melania. So, come on, people. This guy's been in office. She's been with him. The economy is moving in the right direction. Get off your high horses. Shave your beards. Throw off those ridiculous hats of both varieties. I won't say the other one, the pink and the other
hats.
colors.
Yeah.
And try to do something productive. If you really care about helping people, why don't you start by helping people in the inner cities in this country?
Yeah, she seems a very decent woman, and it's kind of sad that people want to project their own morality on someone, like if when she was in her modeling career, she chose to be in a bikini or naked or whatever. If someone objects to that, does that make her a horrible person versus someone who's always showing up in a Chairman Mao oven mitt pantsuit, but yet doing all these crooked deals that cost people their lives? I think I'd prefer a Playboy model in...
She's never a Playboy model.
Well, sorry,
Yeah.
a model who may choose to appear in a state of undress that someone might morally object to, but isn't a vile criminal who is cheating and lying and stealing money of vast sums.
Well, let's put it slightly differently. If the first state dinner of Hillary Clinton would probably be with, I don't know if Robert Mugabe is still alive in Zimbabwe, but it would probably be him. And instead of Melania as first lady, you'd have Bill Clinton, as first laddie. If you could find him during
hitting
the
on
dinner,
the waitresses.
He'd be hitting on. As they said about him, he's the kind of guy who's the last guy to leave a party, hitting on the wait staff, putting away the dirty dishes.
Would they have Roger Clinton? You never hear about Roger Clinton anymore.
So anyway, I think credit needs to go to Melania especially, and to Donald Trump for having his first state dinner come across without a hitch. There were no people jumping into the dinner as happened in Barack Obama's first state dinner and getting through security. Remember what are those people? The Salahis?
Oh yeah, they snuck in, right?
Yeah, and so anyway, if we go back into the slides.
One last question. This is Macron's wife. He looks substantially younger than her.
He is substantially younger than her. And, to each his own, whatever.
Yeah.
People were unfairly saying about him that, he watched a lot of American TV, and he especially loved the show How I Married My Mother.
Well, anyway.
On we go.
Back to the slides.
Yeah. So poor Emmanuel, I think this one here, he must have had, I'm sorry, I'm going to use the phrase, he must have had like a major league brain fart thinking that he could go address Congress, as he apparently did today, and suggest that Donald Trump should reject nationalism. It's like, dude, how many cognacs did you have last night?
You should also suggest that Trump stop having sex with models. I think that'll go over just about as well.
Well, I think he stopped that one. That's
at least one. He's got Melania.
Right, exactly. But, it's very clear that there's actually a proper wave of people saying, we have all these nationalist bureaucracies that are too big and need to be smaller. Mm-hmm. The solution is not to create a very small and easily corrupted globalist absence of government and just turn the keys to that over to a whole bunch of people who run badly small nations like Norway and smaller nations like Canada or whatever. That's not the idea that works here. You need to reform the gigantic, bloated national bureaucracies in the United States, across the individual states of Europe. Once you get that done, if they're projects of common interest, yeah, maybe we can have alliances. But a global governance system is not the best of ideas, even for the United States, which has 5 times as many people, roughly, than France.
But this was the idea that Herbert Walker Bush introduced in 1991 or 1992 at the UN when he flat out called for a new world order.
It doesn't make any sense. We'll get into that in some considerable depth on another day.
Okay.
But so I heard a lot of chatter the last several days. We don't need to pull this one up about how the blue wave was going to, swamp the Arizona race for a special seat in Congress. That didn't happen. But on this one, I do want to pull it up. Here's Alan Dershowitz. I don't know what what they've put in whatever he has for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But he is here showing why it is that he became, I believe, the youngest ever Harvard Law professor. He's got a keen mind with an eye to how individual actions by powerful actors will create precedents that could be damaging to the rights, in particular, of minorities. And what is going on here, I think, what's playing out and why we started this saying it's bigger than Obamagate's worse than Watergate, this is an abuse of the Constitution, which, to go after Trump in the way they're going after Trump and to go after Americans and perceived opponents of the regime the way it happened under Obama, this is a set of abuses that will serve as precedents if they do not stand corrected.
Punish them immediately.
For worse people. And here Dershowitz is saying, actually, all this chatter about Bob Mueller as an exemplary person, and that's so much. I mean, what was he doing with the Whitey Bulger thing? And what abuses happened? And 9/11 and all this stuff. He is certainly not above reproach. And just forgetting all that, forgetting what Dershowitz says here, I mean, why did Bob Mueller, why was he interested in being FBI director? Why, what exactly did he do from September 4th, 2001 to September 4th, 2013 as FBI director? There's a lot of questions to ask about this guy Mueller, and why did he pack his team the way he did? Why did he accept the assignment? If he's such a great, above-the-board, nonpartisan person, why did he say that there was a need for a special counsel who was not actually investigating a crime, which is what's called for under the special counsel statutes, as I understand it? Special counsel can't be,
searching for a crime.
Right, and he certainly can't just be set up to be, just do whatever he wants over here.
But that's what's happened, isn't it? That's what happened.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So
it's the second longest tenure as FBI director in history after J. Edgar Hoover.
And we don't need to pull up the Rod Rosenstein link, but there it's just basically saying the rumors are he's out looking for a job. And I don't know if it's possible to work where he may end up.
Let's look at it, though, because this is important. And actually, I got a question from someone today. First of all, this photo of Rod Rosenstein, it almost looks like a cartoon or something that we would produce. Like, is that a real picture of him, not modified by some crazy Snapchat filter that makes his eyes and teeth gigantic?
Whatever he was eating or drinking at the time, less of that. Less of that.
It's like, whatever lens this is, don't shoot on that. It's not good. But someone wrote to me about, Rod Rosenstein's wife was involved with the CDC or something like this?
No, Rod Rosenstein's wife is a lawyer, I believe, the name will come to me, of Armenian descent, who worked in the Clinton Justice Department. And, a lot of times what happens is that in married couples, they may meet if they met in college or graduate school, and they may have one set of views, but then, just the way it works, the wife has a few children and, changes her mind about things and can become a lot more left-leaning. It could be that Rod Rosenstein, I think he's a registered Republican. I could have that wrong. But again, the rules about conflicts of interest do not go in as deeply as they need to into the various and sundry relationships. There's a nice look on the right there. Mark Hamill.
Skywalker. Well, I'm going to have to look into this some more because people were talking about his wife being somehow...
Lisa Barsoomian.
Somehow involved
National
with
Institutes of Health, right?
Right, and there's this doctor from the CDC who showed up dead, like drowned somehow. And we've heard about how the CDC, there was a whistleblower scientist who had sent a report about the Merck DPT vaccine causing statistically significant rise in brain injuries in African American male children from 18 to 36 months. And the CDC buried this report.
Yeah, well, don't forget the CDC is very much a factor, I believe, a donor to the Clinton Foundation for the HIV/AIDS related work.
And also, it's important to remember that the purpose of the CDC is to promote vaccination. So they're sort of an advertising agency for the pharmaceutical companies. It's a little crazy.
Right. So of course, the mainstream press won't do the research. So to the crowd, let's get smart on who this Barsoomian person is. What are her family interests? Finally, here. You brought this up perceptively at the time, a number of presentations ago, this Syria question, and here we have the latest report on Zero Hedge. No evidence of chemical weapons at Syrian facilities bombed by the U.S. Now, could it be that the Russians and Syrians have scooped in and gotten rid of whatever evidence may have been there?
Seems hard to do after it's bombed.
I think not. So, again, for the reason that until 2001, I'm trying to remember, who was President of the United States in 2001?
Wasn't it George W.?
I believe so. So we've been at war now, various places, for 17 years.
Entire duration of Barack Obama's presidency, first president in history.
Well, and some people, as I like to say about Opie Graham, bless his heart, I mean, I was in a liquor store the other day, and I think this woman was just trying to be very nice to me or whatever, and she carded me. I'm like, yeah, right. Yeah, I don't think so.
You're 23.
Get some new glasses, okay? But I mean, there are people who are 21 years old who probably don't remember a single day when we weren't at war, because most people can't remember back to fours, right?
Well, but and also they think that 9/11 is like this. They don't even, I don't know, it's weird. That's strange to me, people who are like, 9/11, huh?
Yeah.
It feels like last week in some regards.
Yeah, it was a searing experience for those of us who lived through it.
Yeah.
So this thread I want to put up, someone sent this to me the other morning, I think yesterday morning, and it's not to go through now, it's way, way too long. I don't know who this Bustard Hyde, USMC, retired, but you did thanks for your service, sir, and great work. But if we go down this thing, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's a long tweet storm.
That's a great image.
We could use that one. I love the shadow.
Yeah, that's
shadow nose.
I was jealous of that meme when I saw it.
The shadow nose. But here he starts pumping out some of this. It's like 50 points long, right? So maybe you can read it at your leisure. I'll read it at my leisure. But people really need to go into this, examine it in the crowd, tweet it around. Let's get people, following these points, getting it. A lot of the points we've covered.
Yeah.
But some we haven't.
And this has already been happening. People have been sending this to me, so it's good. People are finding these things.
Good. So then we go back into the old slideroos. All right. This is hilarious, the second one. This is a reason to go to the Strand and check out Amy Chozik's book, because we're not buying it. We're not making her richer than she already is. But look at this. This is from her book. Hillary aides called the Clinton Foundation Chelsea's nest egg.
Wow.
Right?
So they're joking about it.
Well, it's not, you see, and it's not a joke. I mean, you saw Doug White's, and people who haven't watched, it's a long, 3 hours is a lot of time to watch something, but look up Doug White. Look up his credentials. They're very impressive. Look at how rough people were on, wrongly against the people at Wounded Warrior, the co-founders of Wounded Warriors. Look how they treated them, even though the thing was being pretty well run. And here we're joking. What was this one here, actually? Even under 16 had to pay to ask her questions, and a family photo with Hillary cost $10,000.
Wow.
I mean, it's like I can't conceive of paying. I mean, you gotta have won 5 lotteries.
You could go on a date with Lady Gaga for less than that.
You could book Snooki.
Yeah, right, exactly. Well, Snooki's getting more than Hillary Clinton, so you might have to pay $12,000 for a photo with Snooki, and they have a Jersey Shore movie coming out, so her rate is going through the ceiling.
But I love this that they opened Veuve Clicquot champagne an hour after the polls closed.
Wow.
Oh, man. This only has, surprisingly, it only has 182 shares. I'm amazed. Maybe this is one I would read. Don't pay for the book. I mean, the smartest thing to do is maybe read it and return it, if you can do that. But definitely write a review.
It's not financial advice.
Oh, man. So we've had a comment in the past that caused me to go back and research it. I know Wikipedia may or may not be accurate, but remember we went through this issue, and we're talking here about Obamagate. The whole story here is Obamagate. We have a community of fraudsters who have been covering up the globalist corruption that goes back at least to 1988 rather, probably includes Bush people, HW, certainly includes Clinton people, definitely includes W people, obviously includes Obama people. I don't think it really includes too many Trump people, but who knows?
We haven't really defined Obamagate on this episode. What is it exactly?
Watergate was the subversion of the Constitution for political ends. This is the subversion of the deep state for financial gain. I mean, this is, and the trammeling of the Constitution. And
by deep state, you mean FBI, CIA,
security agencies, big donors, academia, corporate media, all the above. Have felt, we can let the plebeians, go and pretend that they're, really doing something. They'll scatter to the winds. Meanwhile, while they're busy going to and from work, taking care of kids, pretending the elections matter, we're just going to rig everything. Steal this, pile a whole bunch of debt on the next generation, steal, these crooked deals. We're going to pay the executives too much money, pay these other celebrities too much money, and by the time anyone figures it out, we'll all be dead. So who cares? And that's, I think, far, far worse than whatever Tricky Dick actually may have done in the 72 to 74 period.
Well, but they're also doing whatever Nixon did times 1,000 because they can do it electronically without actually having to break into the Watergate.
Right, and on that, I was going to say something earlier. Here I'm veering off. There ought to be a metadata protection, and its equivalent, Metadata Protection Act. There ought to be, people ought to be told what the true value of an individual's metadata might be, across the spectrum, on a spectrum. How valuable is it? And individuals ought to have an absolute right to protect that metadata, and if they need to sell it or want to sell it, they can sell it for fair value. The notion that you get a little toy over here, some Alexa robot, and you give up something that's like 35-cent piece of garbage, and you give it up for $1 million of value.
Well, you're paying for that Alexa also, and everything that you order through it.
Or you get a Facebook platform or a YouTube platform for free or whatever it costs. In the case of YouTube. And you give up all this valuable information. There ought to be a requirement that you're told how much that stuff is actually worth, because you're not making an educated trade. So we've gone through this whole thing about the insider who, early in January, the State Department insider who we did it last show. And we've done it many shows, particularly December 24th with Biljana over there in Sweden, late at night, early in the morning on Christmas.
We still don't know who that was.
We don't yet know who it was, but we do know that Andrew McCabe took the job of being, if you go down the right-hand side of there, you'll see it's right there, February 1st, 2016 to January 29th, 2018. He was the Deputy Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, coming in February 1st, 2016. And that report of the person on the incident did not get put into the files until around the 20th of February, whereas many other reports, transcripts went right out.
Wow.
So it would seem to me that, again, and maybe the Horowitz report will cover it, maybe it won't, that, just like I believe James Comey was put in to make sure that the investigation into the William J. Clinton Foundation didn't produce an indictment, I think that McCabe was put in to the spot by February 1st, 2016, to make sure that nothing materialized of this investigation under 811C, the referral that started July 10th, 2015. That's why McCabe was put in there. And, we need to really understand, and we know the man can lie, right? So we don't really care what comes out of his flapping gums.
He's been brazen. He's talking about suing Trump for defamation.
Right. The Gilbert Gottfried Award.
What's up with that? How can he be, he's really facing serious prosecution, isn't he?
Right. I mean, he needs to. This is a guy who actually knows literally where the bodies are buried on all the investigations.
He is the guy who bought the lime.
That's right. And the coconut, and drank them both up.
It's not the first hole he ever dug.
Which movie is that from?
That's Goodfellas.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So then, here when we look at this, so that's February 1st. You've got McCabe on top of the FBI. Nobody's going to do anything with the Clinton Foundation investigation. McCabe's on top of that.
Yep.
Then you look at this. If we pull up the Democratic Party primaries and we go down a little bit through the results. I think it's past time for the people who gave money to Bernie Sanders to ask for the goddamn money back.
Well, that's what Jared and Elizabeth were trying to do, and they told them to F.O.
Or P.S., pound sand.
Basically.
But, you look at, there's a whole bunch of primaries were going on. And, a lot of them were close. I think he was robbed in New York. He may have been robbed in a whole Nevada. Or
Nevada, yeah.
I think that's an East Coast pronunciation. I think it's Nevada.
Nevada.
Yeah. I'm told by my dad who's a Westerner.
Oh, she won the popular vote.
Oh, that's obvious that she won, right? That just shows you how effed up the school system
Why
is.
isn't she 50 points ahead?
Exactly. It's ridiculous. And she won, well, whatever. So, in terms of, this is a great thing here. This Katie Pavlich does fantastic work over at Town Hall. If we could pull that one up. Yeah.
Yep. Sorry, I was just responding to Joe Napoli's interest in the hole digging comment.
That's right. But here's Loretta Lynch. I mean, it's one thing to be, inept at lying.
She always has a little bit of a deer in headlights look.
Yeah, or kind of like, fake, James Clapper. He's sitting there and he's asked a tough question and he's going, well, and he starts with his other hand patting the top of his head. It's like, dude, those are like tells. It's like
We're
just
just
telling
cueing the umpire.
It's like I'm lying. What is it? What do they have over Loretta Lynch and her husband?
I don't know.
They got something. So, but we got to know, not only what happened at the tarmac meeting, but why was the reaction to the tarmac meeting that the FBI was very concerned about how the people figured it out and who was leaking, right? It wasn't that we're really...
That something bad happened.
It wasn't,
you found out?
Yeah, James Comey didn't sit there and write a memo to himself about, well, I better do something about Loretta Lynch. No, it's like, hey, we got to figure out who these rotten apple Phoenix agents are who are not with the playbook.
Right. Because it was some journalist who discovered the meeting, right? I forget who. We should know. That's a very important piece of journalistic activity.
Maybe we should try to reach out to that person. If Laura Loomer has contacts in Arizona, perhaps we can do that.
Maybe.
So in the next slide, Richard Pollock, I was involved a little bit helping him with this story, but look at this, the date of this, July 26, 2016.
Oh. Sorry.
You could.
I think we need
it
to.
It says to continue without whitelisting. You can do that.
Oh, can we?
Yeah.
There we go.
Right. So here's a story that got 56,000 Facebook shares. It appeared at 10:21 at night. I don't know what day of the week the 26th of July was, but this is, remember, August 12th, 2016. McCabe supposedly got a blistering phone call from, who was it? Michael Axelrod, at Justice, saying, you better stop this investigation crap.
You're the FBI. What are you doing investigating? Yeah. What is this?
You're the Federal Bunglers Institute. You're not supposed to do this kind of stuff. I mean, this could screw everything up. We got a deal here. We got Hillary Clinton. She's going to be president, and we can blackmail the crap out of her.
Axelrod wants to make it the Federal Bureau of Not Investigating.
Right, exactly. So, here we have it. I love the picture that he selected. But, just for the record, the caption says Clinton Foundation, nonprofit foundation under Clause 501 of the U.S. Tax Code. Actually, the Clinton Global Initiative never was organized lawfully. So, it's not a thing. But anyway, here's Richard Pollock, saying, if you go down the page a little bit, he's talking about this July 15th letter by the brave and wonderful Marsha Blackburn, who charged, along with other Republicans, that the IRS, FBI, and FTC were lawless. They charged the foundation with being lawless, which they are rather. It's a lawless pay-to-play enterprise. Marsha Blackburn, I've actually had the privilege of meeting her at least once, and her staff a fair bit. And these are serious and smart people, and I hope Marsha Blackburn, big shout out to her. I hope she wins her Senate race in November. She deserves to represent the great state of Tennessee in the Senate. But you go down this a little bit further, and you'll see that Richard mentions the number of offices that we keep going down a little bit further. It says, keep going. We've talked about this before.
28 countries.
There's Justra, Uranium One. There's somebody you know. And then you keep going. It says, well, I guess maybe not in this one. I thought maybe the very first paragraph, it says how many field offices. Well, whatever. Richard bird-dogged the idea that there were 4 FBI field offices hard at work. And we've talked before about the great Cheryl Atkinson on page 242. She talks about this. That was a thing. There was a real live FBI investigation, and it stopped. So if we go back in,
Federal Bureau of Indeed Investigating.
right, yeah, exactly, Phoebe, and we don't need to hit this link. People have seen it before. Not enough people in the Congress and dare I say the lamestream press have looked at it. But there was an FBI investigation, 2001 and 2005. Hit that link and you'll find out about it. You don't have to though. So
Looks good on you, though.
All right, and you also don't have to hit. This is shameless self-promotion. We've shown people before. Before July 26th, I got very nervous about the FBI. I was not, even before the tarmac meeting, I was not happy with what I was seeing, and I didn't want to, give my cards completely on the table. So I thought to the FBI. So I thought, why not put it out there on my site? And Zero Hedge picked this up, and I think it has over 250,000 views. But there, you want to figure out what the fraud is? Answer the question, follow the leads that are out there in that paper, and you will see the fraud very clearly, and as I think people are. Now, we have this thing about
the text messages.
The text messages. Now, they just, I think, may have come out
last night. It was it seemed explosive. They were threatening Trump and...
I didn't read them yet, but this is something that summarizes them. I'm going to take my time. I was very busy today, not the least of which preparing for this. But I want to read them carefully, and I want to see all the damn effing emails.
Right.
I mean, I don't buy this idea that there are no emails, that nobody has them. I think a lot of people have the emails.
These aren't the emails you're looking for, Charles.
I know. And I believe that Mark Meadows and Ron DeSantis are both going to get them emails.
See, I feel like this is a message to someone about the emails. It's a very curious recurring number.
Well, you like the 33, but I think...
I don't like it, I just notice it.
Well, I think the real number of emails has to be a lot higher. For example, the email chain involving the Gates Foundation, 100+ donations to the Clinton Foundation going back to 2001. There are a lot of emails there. Don't tell me that nobody around the Gates Foundation knows how to use emails, right?
They all got deleted. We had it on Windows.
It's amazing. All the records of the Gates Foundation, like, damn, Microsoft, I'm never using that again.
Better back it up next time.
Back up the truck. But anyway, we need to get all the emails. And here's one thing. I just want to punch this USA Today thing at the very bottom, not that, yeah. And, here's a shout out and a warning to the Obama Foundation. I had what I considered to be a very productive conversation with the folks at the Obama Foundation last year and then earlier this year. And I am very disappointed to see this story, because I did check a New York State Charity Bureau search this morning, just before I came down here. The Obama Foundation has not amended its Articles of Incorporation, okay? Right. And they should not.
You told them to, didn't
And I
you?
warned them to. And I told them, you don't have to listen to me. I'm just a guy. I'm a member of the public. I may know a little bit about this area. The odd person watches this show. We need the crowd to contact the Illinois Attorney General, which is a lost cause, but the Illinois governor, which may not be a lost cause, and say, look, this cannot stand. This is supposed to be, the paperwork of the Obama Foundation was not organized properly.
But don't guys like that want to be on Barack Obama's good side?
I doubt it. No, in fact, it's the reverse in Chicago. It's the irony of all ironies that the people and the community organizers, the current generation of community organizers, is up in arms. They don't want the Easter Island head, in the middle of their community. They really don't. It's apparently a blight on the neighborhood, and they're going to mess up the local park. And there's all these community organizers up in arms.
Wow.
And a lot of people, view Barack Obama as, a carpetbagger. He went into Illinois, and then he went to Springfield, and the second he could, he went to D.C., and he never went back to Illinois. Huh. So, I hasten to add that I think that it is appropriate to have a truly balanced examination of all these presidents. It cannot be, that only supporters of Obama keep the papers of Obama, and only of HW and W and Carter. And it's got, those papers are the property of we the people. Somebody who has nothing to do with politics should be sifting through all of them and making sure that they're organized properly. But Barack Obama, whatever you may think of him, I think that he waged a war on capitalism, and it was a disaster for this country. But he is an historic figure whose life deserves to be studied, and we need to learn from his life. I'm sure there are good elements to him, and I'm sure there are great elements to his family.
Nothing coming to mind right now.
No. I think I'll say one. I think. And I've said this many times, I cannot imagine how tough it must be to raise two young daughters.
In the White House?
In the White House.
Yeah.
As the first African-American family, living in that place, the pressures to keep those kids from becoming, brats to the, whatever, the Google power, and just to keep the family together, it must have been intense. And from what I can see, and all, I'm just like, I've never come close to them, and I don't want to, but it would appear to me as if they did a good job of that so far. Yeah. And of course, the older child has acted up, had to take a year off, or whatever. That happens.
She smoked a little pot. It's not really the biggest deal.
That doesn't come down from father to daughter at all.
Well, it's not the big. It's not even illegal in every state. But you never really hear anything. I can't even remember. Oh, Sasha is the younger one, right?
But they seem to be. Their kids are kids. I had the fortune of actually, dropping out for 5 years to be a single father for my two children, and I can tell you, even with all the help that I had in terms of a nanny and friends or whatever, it is not easy.
It takes a village, Charles.
No, screw that. It takes, engaged, people who will speak to your children as if they, not lectured down to them, try to understand what's going through their minds. It takes a lot of hard work that people who have, couples where both people are working, it's very, very difficult to work as hard as everyone does and then come home and be a good parent to two children, particularly at that age.
And all the things I dislike about Barack Obama, he does appear to be a loving father, so.
Yeah, and so it's just, he's just completely wrong in economics and useless on foreign policy. Other than that,
and lies about everything.
He's a great president. But no, I think the story of Barack Obama, just like the story of Melania Trump, is an unusual path.
Came from a foreign country.
No, I wasn't making that point. I was not making that point. But he was raised in a foreign country. He was raised in Indonesia.
Pakistan.
Never Pakistan, but Indonesia, which is not so easy to do. Think about his upbringing. He never really knew his true father. And then he was taken into this stepfather's
I thought he did.
home.
He spent a lot of summers with Frank Marshall Davis.
I'm not going there. And then he, try as you might, I'm not going there. But then he was in Indonesia with his stepfather at a very difficult time in the evolution.
Mixed race family.
Well, but beyond that, then the mother says, you know what, you're 12 or whatever the age was. I think I'm going to just send you back to live with your grandparents in Hawaii because, going through puberty is not something that's complicated for either a boy or a girl. I'm going to send you to live with your grandparents who hardly know you in Hawaii to be the poorest kid at their rich school for spoiled brats. That kind of a decision has got to have had a major league impact. It's one of rejection almost. That the mother says, you know what, get the hell out of here. Sending you to Hawaii, I can't deal with you. And so to come from that and then go on this meteoric ride, where his grades were not so good. We don't really know what they were, but we know they weren't good enough to get directly into Columbia.
Well, why do we not know what they were?
I don't know. Because somebody doesn't want to. Generally speaking, in my experience, if there's a contested issue and you have a strong bit of evidence, you don't say, you know what, rather than give you my report card, which will prove how well I did in high school, I'm not going to show it to you because it was that good. I don't want to hurt your feelings. You know, I
Right.
mean, you saw all these A pluses. You might have a, I don't know, you might be triggered by my great grades.
Right.
I don't think that's how it worked.
Right.
So he didn't do so well. You know, he's a member of the Choom gang at Punahou School, however you pronounce it, Punahou or whatever, which is a great school actually.
The
out there.
Choon gang? I never
You heard
of
about
that.
Choom gang. He talked
I
about
never
it.
heard about it. Choon gang?
Choom, C-H-O-O-M.
I don't know anything about that.
Well, in Hawaii, they might have the odd bit of entrepreneurial pot out there underneath the palm trees and elsewhere. And so, yeah, they would smoke a lot of pot, and they call themselves the Choom. It's in various books.
Wow.
But it's not surprising in that generation. I mean, you know, kids of that age, especially at these prep schools, the first thing they do, you know, check in ninth grade. Where's the pot? Over here. Who are the people who haven't been smoking pot yet? We got to get you right into that. You know, so that happens.
We're getting some RF interference today, Charles. I'm not sure why that is. Anyway,
I don't know.
next slide.
Yeah. So I think we can go to the next page, actually.
Boom.
Okay. So this is a very important slide. I want to give it justice. Today is the 40th anniversary of Juanita Roderick's rape by Bill Clinton. And
Wow.
Newsweek has, and I don't really like Newsweek at all. I think it's a joke.
Yeah, I agree.
But it used not to be a joke. But this is something people need to think about, particularly you Democratic senators who didn't look at the evidence of this that was in the evidence when Bill Clinton was up for impeachment. You need to think about this. Here we are, 40 years after the incident and 20 years after impeachment, the vote to indict, rather, to impeach, almost 20 years after that. I think the Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton especially, who want to hold themselves out as paragons of the feminist movement, you know, and we got the Me Too movement bringing down people over allegations of improper behavior. And here you have Juanita Broderick not giving up her quest for justice, which I have met Juanita Broderick several times. And also I want to have a shout out to Kathleen Willey and Paula Jones and Kathy Shelton, whom I've also met. You know, Hillary and Chelsea and others are virtue signaling, going around and claiming that they really believe in this Me Too movement, when they're still, I mean, don't tell me that, you know, Al Capone's daughter would say, you know, he's my dad. I can't really, I mean, he's my dad. What do you want me to do? I mean, if you're out there, if Al Capone had a daughter, which I don't think
they might say that.
I don't know that that's the case. I mean, you get to a point, Jeffrey Dahmer's kids, if he had any.
Does he,
you know,
he ate them.
right, you know what I'm saying? There comes to a point where you got to say, especially if you're this proud, I mean, think of Chelsea Clinton. She's a proud daughter of a proud, in theory, feminist. Wouldn't you think that you go, you know, into your own room and say, you know, or you go to like the battery of shrinks that are paid for by the Clinton Foundation for her, and say like, hey, you know, how can I be a feminist and not castrate my own dad? I mean, it's like, because he's still behaving like this, even now.
I think when you're dealing with people, I mean, this is psychopathic behavior. Someone who would rape a woman and lie about it.
Twice in half an hour.
You know, I mean, become the president and everything. Obviously doesn't care and is super into lying people to cover it up and make it seem like he's a great guy. I think he's done that to Chelsea and whoever for her whole entire life. So it's her perception, you know, perception's everything, right?
I mean, again, I mean, here's Chelsea Clinton. I've never met her. I don't want, again, I'm not interested in meeting people like that, but, you know, by all accounts, and maybe she just got her various degrees, got into Stanford, and then
Diarrhea
Columbia.
on the brain.
But by all accounts, she did reasonably well in school, which you've got to believe she would be able to do, right? If you assume that Bill is her father and Hillary's her mother, not going to the other place. Don't go there, please. But you know, she's smart enough to have gotten through these different schools. She's smart enough to, you know, pull her career together, and she's a modern woman, you know, raising a daughter. And you know, there comes a moment, comes a fork in the road where you decide, listen, you know, I'm however old she is now, pushing 40. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. I'm not.
I just think she's snowed. I think she's snowed. Like that, look, she's educated, but, so is that guy. I mean, you don't just snap your fingers and become a lawyer and accountant. He obviously has education, but he's still fooled by all the elaborate nonsense.
Well, again, if your Toys R Us is closed, but Fraudsters R Us is still open for business, and if you're a fraudster,
That was sad that Toys R Us closed.
Yeah, I have too.
Huge Lego statues in there.
That was one of my first with my eldest, one of my first kind of failures as a parent. I said he must have been like 3 or whatever, and we had this weekend home and we needed to fill it up with stuff. We were, I was working on Wall Street. My ex-wife had worked on Wall Street. We had plenty of money, and we were up in Poughkeepsie area actually, which is a very poor town. And I'd say, no, we're not going into the store and just buying everything that we want. I will let you have one toy, just one toy. Now look
Fair
me in the
enough.
eye, and one toy. You understand that? That's all we're going to get. Yes, Daddy, one toy. It's not going to be a big toy, just one toy. I go into that store, it's like squirt gun, machine gun. I'm like filling up
Wow.
the whole thing. I was like a little kid, and the whole thing cost me like $70 or something.
Wow.
It was nothing. But yeah.
Well, on that note, the next slide.
Yeah. So here we have this review from somebody else, and it should have no
What's
problem
that
with your
about?
browser. It's Gateway Pundit does this.
Oh.
Okay, so this review of a stroke and page text messages is going to take some time here. Now I'm told, I forget who told me this, that Paige, obviously, her husband said, that's not going to happen anymore.
He left her?
And where do you think Paige was living?
I heard she was living at like Obama's house or
McCabe's house.
McCabe's house.
How weird is that?
Yeah, that's
on
weird.
many levels. That's like having Valerie Jarrett live at your house, which is happening with the Obamas. I mean,
Not
it's like,
my house.
It's not going to happen.
No.
Yeah.
It's not
Just
a lot of
doesn't
room
make-
here, Charles.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. This is a nice drawing where they got the X through McCabe.
Yeah.
That's
And-
like the BLM.
Yeah, and it's just this to me, when we take a step back and take the animus out of it, whether it's progressives going after Republicans or vice versa, I think we can concede that technology is super powerful, and that people walking around with 35,000 people walking around, if all of them have guns, and you're the FBI and you're the powers of the FBI, that's a lot of power.
Yeah.
To think that it was run the way it seems to have been run under Obama, and we can go back to J. Edgar Hoover and ask ourselves, how good a job did he do? Not so good.
Right.
It seems to me that oversight of the FBI is something that needs to be brought also into the 21st century. And we need to really see and dwell on and recreate this whole timeline of what these people were doing, what was in their minds, who else knew about this, who could have intercepted these text messages. Are we sure we have all the text messages? This is the 13 BlackBerry crowd. Might they have had burner phones and other
I think
phones?
they said that these were Samsung Android devices.
But what I'm saying is it possible, does that mean they can't be hacked?
Definitely no.
Yeah.
We saw from the Vault 7 WikiLeaks stuff that there's a lot of tools for hacking these. So yeah, who knows how secure or not secure it is. It's a little surprising that people in the counter surveillance business are like texting each other, we're going to get our
That's
country
right.
back. It's
That's
like,
right.
hello, someone's going to see that.
It's like, no, they're not. We got that covered.
Yeah, I don't know.
So not our finest moment.
So the
here.
husband left, Paige.
Yeah.
What does he do? He was working for the government as well, wasn't he?
I don't remember actually. Yeah. But so
Get him
this,
as a guest.
and here we have, this is actually a sad story, this Waffle House thing. Apparently the guy who, in the Waffle House story, there was a shootout in Tennessee. This guy looks like he's mentally ill, but apparently before he shot up the Waffle House, he was arrested, behaving strangely in an area he was not supposed to be in near the White House, and people then went to the FBI and said, please do something about it. And they're like, we don't do that. We're the under Obama, we're the Federal Bureau of Bunglers, or whatever it is, the Federal Bunglers Institute. And they decided not to do anything. Now, I appreciate that the issues of mental health are very vexing issues. There's certain types of mental health, bipolarism, others.
Yeah.
People who have it are extremely smart. The laws in this
Right.
country are difficult to institutionalize people, and even if you do, to keep them in there for treatment, you cannot rehabilitate yourself unless you decide you want to. After all, you can't like go to, yet, maybe with a mind phone hack you can do it, but you can't go into somebody's head and just like switch a few things,
Right.
and
It's
all,
not even fully understood.
yeah. So it's not an easy issue, and I'm not making light of it, but we need to get to the bottom of all these rotten apples in the FBI and the other agencies, and there needs to be extreme vetting at the FBI of the decisions.
Well, Michael McMahon said that was a particular problem, was the vetting, and that came from the top. And when he, as a rank and file agent, tried to bring attention to this, they shoved him out and ruined his life. We've now spoken to several former FBI agents who had been pushed out by the top brass when they tried to do the right thing. So it's important that we make it clear to everyone, including the FBI, who's hopefully listening, that we do respect and appreciate the FBI and want to get out the Andrew McCabes, the James Comeys, et cetera, so it can get back to the proud organization that Robin Gritz describes to me that she felt it was.
Well, or put slightly differently, and I'm going to put words in your mouth. We both want, and you at Crowdsource the Truth, and me as just your obedient servant, we want to make the FBI great again.
Absolutely, and I want the FBI to help me make other people not have such a great time. Yeah. And so far they're doing good, so I don't want to upset them.
So we have here this thing about Scandinavian Judicial Watch, and bless Judicial Watch. Tom Fitton and Micah Morrison and Chris Farrell and those people are doing great work. Apparently the U.S. is now funding a Scandinavian, in quotes, humanitarian group that's helping Islamic terrorists. Now we had the great Biljana Martinovsky was on December 24th. We ruined her Christmas Eve and her early Christmas morning. But it was a real treat to have her on. We should try to try to get her back on if she could come back on. But the situation in Sweden is in past crisis mode, and that great country needs the attention of Donald Trump and his megaphone, because what's going on there is a descent into worse abuses than occurred under Angela Merkel's early days when she lived in East Germany. I mean, it's going where when I was younger, Sweden was, the far out there open society, trying anything that you could try. Now it's a society of conformists, intolerant, going after anybody who might be critical of the obvious flaws of these, this unbridled inflow of immigrants who are creating their satellite sanctuary communities where they're going out and raping and abusing Swedish people and visitors. And if you complain about it now, you get fired. Or you get that's absurd, and the Swedes need to be called to task, rejoin the community of nations. These globalists who think you're going to get away with it, it's not a winning strategy. There shouldn't be a civil war in Sweden. You can't go from being an open society to now being worse than East Germany at its worst, and it needs to be called out. You want to call out North Korea? Let's call out Sweden. The axis of evil.
I mean, we've got now friends who are giving us firsthand accounts of what's going on there. It's a different type of really unprecedented oppression of women who are fearful for their lives. And Biljana told us about women who killed themselves after being gang raped. And I mean, it's just like unheard of evil, and they're suppressing it rather than prosecuting it. It is nuts.
And I mean, here you have, you got Saudi Arabia, which is, is probably already more tolerant than Sweden. Shouldn't you be sitting up there? I mean, maybe stop drinking the aquavit, and doing going to the saunas and whatever you used to do. Maybe, go smell the coffee. Say, like the people in Saudi Arabia are saying, this radical Islamic stuff, not so much, we don't want that anymore. In fact, we're going to stamp it out. So you're going to let all the radical Islamists go to Sweden? Like that makes sense?
It's not good.
I mean, I think Donald Trump really needs to make an issue of it.
Well, he has. He said, "Look at what happened in Sweden," and right away, the CNN dopes and everybody were like,
"You're repeating yourself."
What is that? Yeah, redundant. But they were bashing Trump for even talking about Sweden, and he was correct.
Yeah, and dictators around the world with what's going on, we'll see. The North Korean thing may not end well. It's a long way from here to an actual verifiable change in attitude.
Well, they did announce that they were closing nuclear testing sites, didn't they?
And earlier today, they announced the reason they closed them is apparently one of them blew up
I did not see
How that may have happened, we don't know.
Oh my.
But here we have Daniel Ortega down in Central America for some reason. I've only been to Costa Rica a few times. I've never dared go to Nicaragua or Honduras with their very high murder rates.
I know somebody you could charter a helicopter with in Nicaragua.
I went to business school with Carolina Somoza, who was,
I'm
people
joking. I don't recommend you fly with this guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't go there. That's not something I'd do. But anyway, Monica Showalter was on my radio show. She does great work. She's a specialist in Central and South American affairs. And it looks like old Daniel Ortega could be, if he doesn't watch it here, he may end up like the brutal ruler of Romania, who kind of had a rough senior exit. He was ripped to shreds by a crowd, along with his wife.
They misspelled
what?
Shitholi.
That's right, Scheithel.
Sorry.
But I think around the world, dictators have got to be saying, you know what, this could not be so good for us here. Now, in terms of business stuff, this zero hedge story is worth noting. Interest rates are really going up suddenly, and they're a lot higher in the U.S. This is the 5-year paper. It's the highest yield for 5-year paper since September 2008.
What does that mean to people who aren't in the financial world?
So basically, the fundamental question to ask in investing is compared to what? Somebody says, I got this great idea, compared to what? So what you compare it to is Treasury. Risk-free if you're a U.S. investor. You don't have to worry, in theory, about the U.S. government going bankrupt, although maybe you should. But let's just assume you don't, for the sake of argument. Right. So what does the U.S. government pay you by way of interest? In theory, you're going to get your principal back. You have to worry about inflation. You don't have to pay state and local income taxes on the interest. So that's, without making a tough decision, you can say, I'll put my money in 5-year paper or 2-year paper or 10 or 30. So when you see the benchmark interest rate suddenly go up, and there's a shape of the interest rate curve, the longer you keep your money locked into a security, the higher the rate should ordinarily be. When you see that changing, and maybe even going to this, and having the short-term paper be more expensive than the 5-year, that when it goes up like that, that's called inversion, and that's a sign of a currency crisis. In a currency crisis, Finland, for example, in the currency crisis of whatever year it was, 99, I think, or 8, the interest rate was 100%, short-term interest rate, because you're in a moment where you don't have any foreign exchange, and so and you've got debts foreign exchange denominated that you got to pay off. Right. So you got to pay whatever it takes in the short run to get that foreign exchange, and suddenly your short interest rate goes way up. This is a sign that maybe happens. It's called the term structure of interest rates. When it departs off this norm like this to this, you got major league trouble. And
well, what's that going to mean to the average person who maybe isn't an investor?
Well, I've been saying for a long time, in fact, on Nutrice's show the first time, I said, it's thought, last year, I said like September, October timeframe, it seemed to me as if Trump was winning and Trump was here to stay. And the one trick beyond the Russian collusion and maybe instigating an attack would be if the economy melted down. Because Donald Trump, in a way, Mr. President, if you're listening, if your people are listening, I wouldn't necessarily be touting the stock market as an indication of how well you're doing. You're making a lot of good changes, but we could have a situation where there's a crisis, currency crisis, and if interest rates continue to rise and invert because there is a crisis of confidence, perhaps provoked by speculators like George Soros, who could look at this and, he definitely has Donald Trump's worst interest in his mind first thing in the morning and the last thing before he goes to sleep.
And he loves to mess with currencies.
He's broken multiple countries, including the UK, famously, where he made £1 billion or $1 billion betting against in just such a moment. So if you have the wherewithal and you're running with a crowd that has the wherewithal around the world to put on a big anti-Trump, anti-US economy bet, you can make a boatload of money tanking the US economy, which is really arguably what George Soros did and others have done across the emerging world. So this is a sign to me that people ought to tread very carefully. Don't think that the prices that are for all these stocks are always going to stay elevated beyond sanity. Things could turn around very quickly. And if we continue to the next slide, So it's interesting. I have raised an issue, if we hit this Yahoo Finance thing, I have raised an issue here that Jeff Immelt's pay and the idea, Jeff Immelt followed Jack Welch into GE when the stock price was roughly 40 when Immelt took over in September 7th, 2001, when now it's less than 15. Jeff walks out with hundreds of millions of dollars of compensation in stock and lots of cash compensation and benefits and a huge pension. I don't think that's right. I don't think that I think we need to rebalance the risks and rewards for executives at these cushy companies. It's not like Jeff Immelt goes into work in the morning and it says, hey, I got nobody to help me. He's got like staffs of consultants, external consultants and internal consultants and all these flunkies working for him. And he didn't put any positive points on the board. It was just a complete wreck by the time he left. And he gets to walk out with a tremendous amount of money for doing that. That just sends the wrong message. And we have this, just as you talk about the corporate media being corrupted, we have this corrupt system where directors and executives conspire to, you pay these people who really don't need the $500,000 a year for like 12 board meetings, and let's say they spend 30 days a year on the company, or even 50.
That's 500 grand.
500 grand of what you know about. Then there's, you're hobnobbing at the board meeting, you're learning, meeting other big people and gaining advantages. Maybe because you're a director at GE, you're able to get preferred investment opportunities, or your star rises and you get other benefits. The directors of a company need to have real liability. They cannot be insulated, in my view.
Well, and oversight as well, because what we're not talking about, and this crosses over into Jan Weinberger's research, that a lot of people, I thought GE was making light bulbs until I started talking to you guys, but they're a gigantic military contractor, and they're having emails with the State Department and the Clinton Foundation, and
Right.
This guy's like smack in the middle of the pay-to-play deal.
Right, and it's not enough. It's one thing to say, I tried really hard and it was difficult, and that's the kind of stuff that you didn't like Woody Allen to be your, the CEO of GE.
El Presidente is down.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. You got to perform, and in just the same way. These corporate people are fond of saying, it's all about long-term strategy and value, and then they go to the investment managers like, what do we do this week? How come you're making all this extra money on your carry? There has to be an alignment of interests. Ordinary people understand that, if you're just going to be a factory worker at GE, bust your ass. You don't make $20 million a year at the end of it, right? And there are a lot of people depending on these big Titan CEOs. It's not simply all about GE. There are many, many investors. I think GE may be the most widely owned, at one point the most widely owned stock by individual investors, and certainly by all the investment funds. Pension funds, not simply of for-profit corporations, but teachers unions and governments and whatever, they all own GE. And there ought to be a rebalancing of this. And I think there should be a clawback, if it's possible, for what really has happened to GE, and we need to understand how far back the malfeasance, if any, may have occurred. Does it go back to Welch? Does it go back further beyond? And there needs to be a message sent to corporate America that no, under Donald Trump, there's bipartisan, progressive, and I'm a conservative economically, conservative saying, I will agree with progressives that I actually think workers should have pensions, and the pensions should be fully funded. And people should be encouraged. It should be in the interest. If you think clearly as an American company, you need customers. You don't have customers by cutting the workforce down to a bone. If you could pay Jeff Immelt $20 million, you might want, and his whole coterie of whatever his people are, all his hangers-on and his assistant corporate jet pilot and the mechanic and his chauffeur and all these people, you can afford to figure out a way to raise the level of compensation for the workers who are actually making the goods, providing the services, give them a real pension, send a message, and then have that pension be managed responsibly, not in GE stock, other than in GE stock. There should be some real discipline. And pension funds need to stand up and turf these people out and go after them. And if the directors are not doing their job and the professional people are not doing their job, a message needs to be sent to them too. And I can tell you, GE is a poster child for an abuse, in my mind, long-running abuse of the capitalist system. So if I'm going to dump on Barack Obama, here's another reason I'll dump on him. Why would you pick, out of all the people in this bar, why do you pick Jeff Immelt to administer the stimulus program?
What about the business, what's that?
Roundtable?
But yeah.
Again, I'm not down with that. I'm not down with these clubs, where
Right.
you get together and
All the biggest bigwigs conspiring to screw everybody else.
Well, again, in my experience, and there's a little bit of bias here going way back, we had family companies. Those are the best kind of companies because they can be all kinds of problems, family companies. You shouldn't necessarily, just because the kid is the eldest kid, you don't pluck that person in who says, I really want to be an artist. You don't say, okay, you're going to run this gigantic Coke. I'm not saying it happened with Koch brothers, but a company like Koch brothers just because they're the eldest kid or a kid. So there are all kinds of problems with family-controlled companies. But on the other hand, family-controlled companies that keep it together for generations do tend to do things correctly. They learn from their mistakes. There is a balancing. They understand it's tough to find talent and nurture talent and keep talent motivated and productive.
Well, and they have a sense of family pride and they trust each other and everything.
Right, but when you have a company, and I would argue in the case of GE, it was like, we don't care. That didn't work, let's try this. We were a healthcare company, now we're an energy company. We're a diversified company, now we're a finance company. It's just, let's bring in the consultants, get on the jet, fly around the world, boom, 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 boom.
They
boom.
don't even make light bulbs and
They
refrigerators anymore.
They do make light bulbs.
Oh, I thought they sold that division to a Chinese company.
They couldn't sell it.
Wow.
It's that bad. Anyway, so here, there is another area. Charity fraud and fairness and equity in executive compensation are two areas where progressives and conservatives will certainly agree when they think about it. Now, Bill Kristol, which brings us to the subject of Bill Kristol. We like to end these presentations, and we are almost done. Would you please just do the honorable thing and join the Democratic Party? Because you're a bonehead. He's just a bonehead. He got everything wrong for the last several election cycles. I don't know why there's a video popping up.
But it seems like it's not.
Yeah, whatever, maybe I gave you a bad link, but Bill Kristol saying that the Democrats are going to sweep the midterms, okay? Because he's mostly wrong. He's a valuable guy. You find somebody who's mostly always wrong, that's valuable.
Right, just do the opposite.
Right, it's just extremely valuable.
I don't know, that video's not playing for some reason.
Right, well, anyway.
We'll go to the next one.
It's a bad link, sorry for that. And finally, this is a topic that once we get the Clinton Foundation regulated, our next project, you will hear it now first on Crowdsource the Truth. My next target is going to be the Ivy League. Because I think what we have here is we have a bunch of fat, dumb, and happy people who are living large, breaking all the rules, have a gigantic endowment. They are case studies in what is called enormement, the illegal appropriation of private gain for the benefit of the professors, significant donors to the schools, et cetera.
And then they can join Antifa and hit people in the head with bite locks.
Right, and so this whole education mafia, which is a very large mafia, it's not simply the elite universities, it's the institutes, it's to a certain extent the bought and paid for members of the media, who all scratch each other's backs. America's educational institutions used to be first rate. I mean, truly first rate. And remember, my father explained this to me. I didn't know this. For many decades, if not centuries, the leading universities in the world, and from like 1700 to early 1900, were where?
London?
Germany.
Oh.
All right. What can happen when universities start producing closed-minded, intolerant people? I mean, I think if we look at the period, 1916 to whatever it was, right the way to 1945, intolerance, the decision that a bunch of people with, fancy caps and credentials know better than the rest of people, and that there's one answer fits all, and if you want to disagree, then you're an idiot or you should be hounded. That is a very dangerous way to live, and I think history teaches us that that's the wrong way to live. And generations are scarred for quite some time often by that type of behavior. And I think we should see what we see in this intolerance as a warning sign. Not that, that Donald Trump's people, the deplorables, are wrong, but indeed it's the elitists who are wrong. And if we were in a great place geopolitically, if America's star had risen, if we weren't hounded by 21 trillion of debt that we know about, by following the wisdom of the small crowd of elitists, then maybe I'd be saying, I'm not going to complain too much about it. But once we get the Clinton Foundation and its network of donors regulated, which I believe is in process, and
imminent almost,
very imminent, and I'm not going to betray confidences, but I would say that those who are going to bet against the idea that the federal government in the United States and state governments and foreign governments are going to do something about this,
it's bad.
They were getting ready. They're putting their glass of champagne out. Hey, Chelsea, can I have some of that vodka? Because I really want to be with you. I'd like to move down to D.C. Can I be on the team?
10,000 for a photo, Charles.
Yes, I paid 10,000 for a photo.
Cash.
You can't use no Bitcoin on that.
Right. Well, Bitcoin's been pretty volatile the past couple days, Charles. It was up, it was down. It's really...
While you look at that, I'm just going to let the record show that I finished in exactly 2 hours. So this is now all on you.
Okay,
I'm kidding.
We're just gonna wrap it up there and say that.
No. But I want to do one more thing. I'm just teasing.
Sure.
So you keep going on Bitcoin.
No, it's below 9,000. It was close to 10,000. It's all these cryptocurrencies are all over the place. It's a very difficult market to understand. Bitcoin's at about $8,865 right now. I know you think it's virtually worthless. We'll see where it goes.
It's not that, but if we just go back to the slides for a quick second, I want to explain what the balance of the presentation is.
Right.
It is, I went back and I thought it important, both for you, Jason, but for the crowd at large, to take a peek at some of the ways in which I reached out. Now this leads out, this starts the 17th of April 2016, okay? This just encompasses a hot period where it became obvious that Donald Trump might be the nominee, and it became obvious that Hillary Clinton might be the nominee. So what did I try to do in this time period? This leaves out many, many appearances. Oftentimes when I would go on certain TV or radio stations, there was no special clip created. And to be fair to the mainstream press, I was extensively on CBS and ABC and NBC radio across the country in all sorts of markets. I was never on CBS, ABC, or Maniac NBC television, but I was on Fox Business, and I was on quite a few international television things. And many of those clips are not here. And rather than take up too much time with it, I just called anything, whether it was a blog posting or I call that print. After, I guess some I call postings. Those were my own site, I think.
But basically what we've got is a summary list of all of your appearances.
Not all. This is not even many. It's probably a third. It's probably a third.
Wow.
And there's 60 here in this time frame. Now, some of them are interesting. There's one movie, which I didn't put up. This is actually worth clicking on. It's pretty funny. The Guardian had a review of this. It's like the worst piece of crap ever done or something like that. The Guardian.
They obviously haven't reviewed some of the films that I've worked on.
I don't know why this is taking time, but still, and I don't even know what Rotten Tomatoes is.
That's a reviewing site.
And it's pretty funny how this one, the one I had when it popped up, it showed an ad for Heinz ketchup on it. But
it goes with the tomato theme.
I didn't know this, but the producer of this movie was apparently, according to this, he was the producer of the second highest grossing political documentary movie of all time.
Which was what?
I don't know, but the guy's name is Bill Baber, and I had a small...
It's got to be Primary Colors, no?
Could have been, actually, I don't know. But this was Daniel Halper's book, and I had a small part in this. And there was an article in Daily Mail about how it was going to go national. I think it came out right around this time, September 30th, and it's going to go for a small run, and then it's going to go all, whatever it was, 3,000 screens or whatever the number of screens is. And that didn't happen.
Wow, 3,000 screens is a wide release. That's hard to get. Charles, your film did better than Maze Runner. So that's good.
What's Maze Runner?
I don't know, but it only got 42%. So that's rotten tomato going splat. This is, popcorn, not quite a rotten tomato.
It also went to better than Den of Thieves.
Yeah,
not so good as Paddington 2. How can you get a 100% rating?
Obviously, Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, that's right.
Reviewing that.
And Jeff Bezos put that, and the team that gives you the negative strikes also knows how to do all positives.
That's right.
So this was my movie debut.
Pretty good.
Faceplant.
But people now will have a list when we upload this.
Yeah, and we're going to update this. But this one is also, we put this up before. This is, honestly, this was I really appreciated Ginny Thomas. I didn't know who she was. I think I've told you this story before. And this was something that went up, I believe it's a half an hour, so you don't want to do that. But
no, we'll just let it roll.
But this was, Ginny Thomas is Clarence Thomas's wife.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know that when I first, when I accepted. I didn't even ask her who she was. I was just a daily caller. She were you going to be in Washington? And we like
Thomas is a very common last name.
Yeah, exactly. But so she's a very experienced person, and she asked me a bunch of questions. The camera person was a graduate of Hillsdale College, and this is actually the Hillsdale campus in Washington, D.C. And Hillsdale's an interesting school. It's got its pros and cons, but this was a real honor to do this, and I actually think it may have swayed a few votes. I mean, it was, and I didn't have any of the questions. I don't want questions in advance, but I didn't have them in advance, and she just asked them, and she did a little editing.
This was right at the time of the Podesta email leak.
This is, after it, but it was several days before the election. This ran the whole weekend of the election, before the election.
Wow.
And that's why I think it got so many shares and whatever. So.
Oh yeah, look at that. Quite a lot.
So anyway, there's a lot more out there. We're going to try to curate not only this stuff, but first we're going to try to curate the many shows that Jason, you and I have done together, and we're going to put them out in a format. We're not going to do all of them because there's too many, but we're going to select some that people really need to go back and look at. Those particular that will help the prosecutors. Particularly, there are some new countries that I'm aware of that weren't all that interested until recently, and now that appear to be quite interested. And we want to point those new countries and maybe some of the new state attorney generals into the meat of the issue. So what we tried to serve as this gigantic smorgasbord of all the different dishes that you might want.
Like the charcuterie of financial crime.
There we go. Where do we go next? I'm certainly not having any kombucha. There's no kombucha served at this table.
I don't know what you have against kombucha.
I just don't like the sound of it. It's like yogurt. Ugh.
Well, so Charles, we'll be back on Sunday with more amazing information. And until then, is there anything else you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I don't know if you want to talk about the crowd at all, but...
Well, the crowd is growing, despite the strikes on YouTube. We've got nearly 6,000 subscribers now on Crowdsource The Truth 2. And if people are watching us on Facebook or periscope.tv/CS The Truth, or if you're in Russia watching us on vk.com, Privyet, Kagdala, people can find us still on YouTube, Crowdsource The Truth 2. And of course, we've recently implemented the new live streaming feature on Patreon, where the live streams are now fed by Vimeo. And it's the same material that people can get for free, but when you become a monthly sponsor by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, you gain exclusive access to those live streams, and you can avoid the inconvenience that people are having when these malicious anonymous strikes from unknown individuals with completely benevolent purpose. They can avoid the inconvenience of losing access to the streams, and they can always find them at patreon.com. And if you just want to support the show, if you like the type of work that we're doing at Crowdsource The Truth, bringing you great investigations and research from people like Charles Ortel, people like Harmon Wilfred, people like Jan McConnell. Jan Weinberg is back. He was on vacation for a little while. I really try to get all the most interesting guests that I can and varied points of view. Even when people disagree, I try to give them a fair shake. They still get mad at me. We'll see how that goes. People can also make a one-time sponsorship payment at paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. And it is now becoming more important than ever that people who like the program sponsor it, because as the resistance increases, I have to do more work just running to stay in place.
One thing I forgot to mention I'd like to bring up quickly. I was told by somebody I respect that the new tax law actually places a limit on charitable contributions. That is not true. That is a massive loophole. So the question of looking carefully at charities is going to be especially important going forward, and one that the Trump administration and Congress is going to want to focus on very, very carefully. So the idea that you could find a crooked charity, and I can't think of any, that begin with C, or B actually, Bill, Hillary,
right.
But you find a crooked charity and you say, all right, look, we know nobody's ever going to check, so we'll give you, how much money do you want in your Swiss bank account? And I want a piece of paper that says, I gave you $1 million.
Right.
And then I'll put that into the IRS and I'll get whatever the money is that I get back. So the question of charity fraud, I think, is going to rise in importance in the minds of the Trump administration and the minds of the wider circle in America and around the world, in part because of the change in the tax code. And so that's why I feel very good about all the work that we've done and the work that Doug White does, and the very few people who actually spend the time to get into the weeds. I think that work will pay off and bear fruit and do good things to protect donors, to protect American taxpayers and other taxpayers. So I feel very grateful to you, Jason, that you've invested all this time and the resources to let us have this great platform, and I hope it really flourishes.
Thank you, Charles. And I just want to clarify that you're talking about charities.
Right.
Money that people are using to sponsor Crowdsource the Truth is not a charitable contribution. Crowdsource the Truth is a for-profit business, and that doesn't mean that we're not striving to give you honest and true information. It just means that any money given to Crowdsource the Truth is a sponsorship payment, not a donation. And of course, you know, people like to criticize me for trying to earn money by what I do, but I spend all day meeting with people, speaking
put up with me,
preparing these presentations. It's a pleasure to work with you, but obviously it takes time. Your work is, I haven't had the good fortune of being a Wall Street tycoon, and with my Hollywood career behind me, the savings are dwindling, and it's more important than ever that people sponsor Crowdsource the Truth. And please go on to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and do that. Only a couple days left here in April, so now is a great time to do it. Also, people can purchase wonderful Crowdsource the Truth swag from redbubble.com. And if you want to get in on time phone hacking, which is a fun meme that Quinn Michaels has created, and it's an interesting way to see how people interact with artificial intelligence, and he's got AI bots tracking time phone hack, the hashtag on Twitter and elsewhere. He's also exploding the brains of idiots around the internet who are super upset about time phone hacking. I don't fully understand that, but it's pretty funny, I think. Charles, I want to thank you again for an amazing program. I want to thank everyone for watching. Oh, there is one more thing. Periscope, I didn't realize this, but when people put hearts on Periscope, that is somehow monetizing the Periscope channel. So apparently we're about 12,000 hearts away from becoming a super broadcaster on Periscope. So if you're on Periscope, and if you know what a super broadcaster is, and you want us to be that, yeah, keep sending the hearts. Thanks for that. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll be back tomorrow. Charles will return on Sunday at 3, and we'll see you then.